Hi, I'm here to cast my vote.
No.
Darn it. 1840. Elizabeth Stanton and Lucretia Mott traveled to London as delegates to a convention. Since they were women, they were not allowed to speak or vote. Since then, they were determined to form an organization for women's rights. Over the years after, supporters did marches, hunger strikes, and many other forms of protest to get recognition. It wasn't until 1920 when President Woodrow Wilson advocated for their rights. The 19th Amendment would soon be passed after this, granting American women the right to vote. This is significant to U.S. history because it brought equality of women to society and were no longer neglected or denied their point of view. Yes. The Cold War was the result of political conflict, military tension, and economic competition after World War II between USA and the Soviet Union. Between the dates of 1945 and 1991, tension between the USA and Soviet Union over control for post-war world emerged. Soviet Union held a grudge against the USA for not helping them on the second front during World War II against Germany, and also because USA gave relief loans to Great Britain and not to the USSR. That was after the war. USA had a goal to spread democracy globally, but the USSR wanted to overthrow capitalism and to spread communism. Both countries knew that they needed to work together, but they couldn't trust each other because both had nuclear weapons. Cold War affected America in many ways. The Cold War brought a scare of communism into America, which was called the Red Scare. During the 1940s to the 1950s, Eisenhower reduced government spending at home in order to stop creeping socialism. Kennedy's New Frontier inspired patriotic visions of new hope in American youth. It was inevitable to have conflict between the USSR and Soviet Unions and USA, but it was avoidable to have a war. The big three, which was FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill of Great Britain, and Joseph Stalin of Soviet Union. FDR was from the USA. And it was called the Cold War because USA and the Soviet Union both had nuclear weapons, which is why they never physically attacked each other, because it would destroy both countries. Barack Obama is the first ever black American president in U.S. history. Not only did he become the president, but he also overcame the last racial barrier in American politics. Obama's victory was both historic and sweeping, defeating a war veteran considered a hero and also taking the Democratic candidacy over the wife of a former president. Obama's campaign exhibited hope and change, which brought many Americans' self-esteem and self-value higher. The significance of Obama becoming president was great in U.S. history. From slavery in the beginning of our country forming to an actual black man becoming president, which proves a lot. Not bad. Man, building a canal is tough. The Panama Canal is a 51-mile canal in Panama that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. It was worked on between the dates of 1880 and 1914. The creation of the canal took many lives as well as many years to finish due to malnutrition, malaria, and disease. At first, the French started to work on it, but were busy with other problems, so they had to leave it alone. Then the Americans got a hold of it and finished it under President Teddy Roosevelt's order. America made a breakthrough completing the canal because This created a shortcut going through the narrowest part of Central America, making the trip shorter in time and distance. This would also make the trip safer, as the cape around the southern tip of South America is a very dangerous body of water. The I Have a Dream speech was performed on August 28, 1963 by Martin Luther King. This speech was a defining moment of the civil rights movement. His speech demanded racial justice and integrated society. The main message behind the speech is that all people are created equal. The first half of his speech portrays the reality of the nightmare of racial injustice in America. The second half of the speech describes the dream of a brighter future of racial harmony and desegregation. The speech was just one of the many during the March on Washington, but it became the most famous. Significance behind the speech: Martin Luther King talked about racial justice for all people, not just African Americans. He spoke of a society where everyone was equal, no matter their race. The Manhattan Project was a research/development program ran by the United States with help from the UK and Canada that made the first ever atomic bomb during World War II. Between the dates of 1942 and 1946, the project was mainly designated to the Manhattan District, which gradually gave it its name. In 1939, a group of physicists made a letter which said of the potential development of extremely powerful bombs of the new type. Einstein wrote this with the help of others and signed it to Roosevelt. All started with President Roosevelt responding to uranium research for government support. The committee included both civilians and military officials. Although the main project was the first time the U.S. made an atomic bomb for war, Ernest Rutherford from New Zealand developed the first artificial transmutation of an element, which was essential for atomic bombs. This was in 1919. While the atomic bomb was being produced, President Roosevelt died, bringing Harry Truman into charge of the bomb's actions. This is significant to American history because it helped us finish Japan for good, and we made history by being the first ever to do it. This also proved that the U.S. is capable of producing nuclear weapons. The Internet is a global system of computer networks connected virtually to serve users worldwide. The idea was developed in 1957 when multiple remote connections were installed to the first computers. Commissioned by the U.S. government in order to build computer networks, the Internet is based on 4 concepts: defense network, military network, commercial network, and the scientific network. The term Internet is short for the technological term interwork. The Internet in the 1960s was only used for defense networks. Now today, it is used publicly worldwide for messaging, markets, social networks, business, etc. The Internet is significant in U.S. history today because it helped the U.S. during the Cold War against the Soviet Union and is part of the United States' growth and development of society today. On December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, Pearl Harbor was attacked. Pearl Harbor was the United States naval base for their Pacific Fleet that got surprise attacked by the Japanese during World War II. The attack was meant to keep the United States from interfering with Japan's military actions against territories overseas. The bombing of Pearl Harbor was the action that brought the United States into World War II against the Axis powers, since Japan was part of it. This is what brought the United States into World War II, and that is why it is so significant. Pearl Harbor stands as a symbol of one of the ultimate betrayals ever due to a sneak attack that resulted in many deaths on a country not involved in the war. September 11th, 2001 was a tragic day in American history. 19 terrorists from Al-Qaeda's militant group hijacked 4 passenger airplanes and targeted them towards the Twin Towers in New York City, the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and the last attack in Washington, D.C. that failed. 2 planes crashed into the Twin Towers, making them collapse to the ground. 1 plane crashed into the Pentagon about an hour after. Nearly 3,000 people died in total from the attacks on this day. After these attacks happened, security systems in airports became more diligent and cautious. These terrorist attacks also caused many Americans to stereotype people of Islamic or Middle Eastern descent as terrorists. This also was one of the primary reasons that brought America to war against the Middle East. July 20th, 1969. Apollo 11 was the first spacecraft that landed, the first humans ever on Earth's moon. Launched on July 16th, Apollo 11's crew consisted of Neil Armstrong as commander, Edwin Aldrin Jr. as lunar module pilot, and Michael Collins as command module pilot. The spacecraft came back on July 24th, landing safely in the Pacific Ocean. Apollo 11's accomplishment succeeded JFK's goal of landing a man on the moon before the Soviet Union could during the Cold War. There is little controversy whether the men actually landed on the moon or not, from doubters. The significance in U.S. history of this is because it went to show how America was advancing technologically and with exploration also. And this also showed how great the determination of America was, for it fulfilled its mission of landing the first man on the moon. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.